Hello and welcome. My name is Robert Bierig. I am from Cogniom, and today we're going to be doing a short webinar on how to know your impact. What does that mean exactly? Well, it means that you've probably come across a really great innovative idea at work, or you've got something that you want to take to your boss because you think it'll really help you get more work done. However, there's usually a problem. Um, when you present these ideas, your boss already says it's your job, just do it. We don't need to spend more money on it. But if you can instead come to them and say, hey, if you buy this thing, I will double your money back. Suddenly, it's no longer I want you to spend money. It's, hey, this is an investment and I'm going to be able to give you so much money back. You're going to thank me later. Knowing how to flip that narrative and change the way that you're speaking to your executives and your leadership so that they get interested is all part of the process. And today, we're basically going to walk you through step by step how to define the benefits. What is the ROI? How do I make a case study? And what is it that they want to see in these types of documents? When we basically help you, by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to take something to your boss that helps you prove just how valuable your idea really is. So buckle up. We're going to start and drill in. So first thing to always think about is there's a big difference between your understanding of your workday and what leadership thinks that you do. Huge, massive gap of understanding. It's not completely uncommon for you to know your job better than anyone else in the company. But that doesn't mean that you're helpless at getting the people to understand what your issues are. You just have to be kind of careful not to over analyze and start talking about things that are a problem for you. You need to start thinking about how this is an opportunity for the company. So, frontline staff and vendors and other people that are usually doing the work will typically speak in solution speak. It's, hey, I need this new gadget, or if we change the process to this, it'd be more efficient, or we could completely change if we just spent a little bit of cash to do this extra thing here. Those solutions are you asking for things, or as if you think of the root cause, it completely flips the conversation. It's not, I need you to buy this thing so more efficient. It's, hey, when we remove these delays, we'll be able to see double the amount of customers. I think I have an idea for that. You've removed you and the solution as the focus, and you've put it to, here's how we're going to make revenue as the key feature that you're going to use to describe your idea. CFOs need a business case, and more often than not, they need a financial benefit. If I give you $2, you give me $2 back, now you're speaking my language. Instead of it being a cost, how could it possibly be an investment? For somebody that doesn't really have a big background on business and understanding how to translate this stuff, this is what we're going to help you through on the next couple of slides. So, first off, what do we do with this huge communication gap? CFOs don't like wasting money. They're not going to just hand over a bunch of cash, especially if it's based off of something emotionally merited. Like, I feel that this could be a really big benefit to us and that it could really save us some time. When you say I feel or I think, or it's based on your own emotionals or your observations at your job, it's very little data. It's your word versus his. So that means that any argument, no matter how emotional, can override your argument. So the next thing to do is think about how we could possibly prove what I'm saying is true and have data to back you up. That by quantifying what that data is, you can also then start saying, and this is the benefit and the impact it's going to have, and I'll prove it to you. With your ability to grab data, you now have a business case. You can basically prove a return on investment. For every dollar you give me, I give you $2 back. And here's the data that proves what I'm saying is true. It basically nullifies the emotional argument that you get from the other side. If somebody thinks otherwise or wants to argue, all they have to do is bring up their data set, which is probably not there, for you to basically override and say, no, this one is actually backed by something other than just my opinion. So Moving on, what you're going to learn today is how do you calculate these benefits and how would you translate those into a final return on investment, the 2-for-1 kind of deal that you're going to give to your boss. And when you structure your case statement and the document you're going to hand over or the presentation, what does it need to include? What sections do you need to start thinking through, and how would you write one typically? We're going to walk you through this step by step. So first, how do we define a benefit? Well, benefits are a little tricky because they only happen because something has changed. You can't point to something that's always existed and say that's our benefit. You also can't point to a KPI or something that hasn't really done anything for you because you haven't put anything into the system different to show that there's a benefit. So change is what causes the benefits to exist, and you have to be able to measure them. If you can't measure it, you can't prove it. So you have to have some kind of data set. You can either create it, pull it from another system. If you've got digital systems you can use, there's other ways that you can calculate this stuff, but start thinking about, well, how am I going to prove, like with a scientific case, that this is true? Benefits also need to either end up increasing your revenue or decreasing your costs. One of those two things need to be true for a financial benefit to occur. You also have to have an enabler. Hey, this is the new technology we're going to use. This is the difference in the process. We're going to eliminate this step so that it's going to make it so we see a lot more customers. Whatever your benefit is, the technology, the new thing that you're introducing is your enabler, and the business change has to come from something where management is interested in going in the first place. If they're going to say we need to be compliant with new legislation and you're nowhere related to anything that they're working on, you're not going to get a lot of attention. By focusing on something that's within their foresight and on the horizon of where they're going, you'll have a much better time getting money for your project because they were already moving in that direction anyway. Finally, when you have a baseline, a metric, you also have to have a target. What is it that you think you'll be able to achieve? It's great that this is the full potential, but more than likely only half or 80% or some portion of what you think is possible will actually occur. So what is your target? Out of all the possible benefit that you're going to receive, it's going to be how much as a percentage at the end. Finally, data sources. You have to be able to prove it. So here's a couple of easy ways with an effectiveness level kind of built in. If it's on the red side, it's probably not as good. If you get up to the green, it's getting a lot closer to something that's going to be hard to argue with. At the bottom, maybe you're going to model it out, simulate it, write up just some quick sketches on a napkin. Whatever that is, it's very low value. You don't have a lot of data to prove what you're doing, and most of it's made up. If you don't have a really good system to be able to help you with this, a lot of it's just going to be guesswork. So modeling and simulation has to have a huge amount of data. If you don't have that, I suggest going to the next step. Next one is benchmarking. Usually industries know exactly what the commonality of this type of work is and where they basically sit. So for example, if you're in construction, you probably have a measurement of the time that you spend on tools doing a job versus preparing or cleaning up or other things. The benchmark industry standard, maybe it's a 40% of your day is time on tools. If you know that you're sitting at 25%, you can point to the industry standard and say there's a big gap between what everybody else does as our competitors and where we're sitting. That's a huge eye opener for management. The next one is historical data. Can you go back into the past on a digital system or some kind of log or somewhere you have information that you can already see existing and borrow to pull, here is our current situation and this is what the potential is in the future. Now, be warned, historical data over the last 2 years has been a little bit variable, let's just say. It goes up and down with COVID and with inflation and with the constant back and forth and craziness of economies. It's probably not going to be the most reliable if it's a very short time frame. If you can go back years or even a decade or so, make sure that you have a huge swath of information. That's going to be a little bit easier to prove than just last week, which could have been all over the place. Next up is a self-reported study. This one is great to overcome the argument of the special snowflake. It's not apples to apples to compare us to that other company or to that industry standard. It's not exactly what we do, so you can't really compare. You'll get that a lot, even though it's a very close metric in your opinion, or the job that you're doing doesn't really differ from place to place. You'll still get that pushback. Yeah, that's great, but we do differently. So if you're going to do a self-reported study, it's basically a diary, day in the life where you're recording how long it's taking you to get through things, how much it's costing you to get through things. And using a diary, you capture that information for a certain period of time, a couple of weeks, and then it came from your business and from you doing the work. That eliminates that entire special snowflake argument. Next up, it's a little bit harder, but if you can find a mini-me, an intern, somebody whose job it is to be able to do improvement projects, bring them in and have them watch you do that work. As you're going through and you get delayed, or you have missing equipment, or something goes wrong, if you have somebody behind you recording and measuring every step of the way, they'll be able to show you this is how much that calculated time cost you. And based on your wages and equipment costs and opportunity, this is how much our delays are costing the business overall. So if you can get somebody else to help you track and watch what you're doing, day in the life, time and motion are fantastic sources of information. And finally, the best but most expensive one is a product pilot. This one you actually pay for the product and you take a before and after snapshot of when it existed. You'll still need to do time and motion, you'll still need to do something, but you use the new way of doing things as a comparison point so that you have what you used to do to what you do right now. Now, I highly recommend that a product pilot not go super in depth or super wide within your organization. You need to think of this strategically. What is the one area or facility or group of users that is super small and can show the benefit that we're going to have out of this without it scoping and creeping out to everybody? You want to make sure that your pilot stays cheap. You don't want to spend a whole lot of money on the first one, but you want to be able to prove that it has a benefit over time. Next up, your 4 levels of benefits. Now, not all benefits are created equal. Depending on how well you record them, will basically show you how much you can prove that 2-to-1 return of investment later on. So we're going to walk through these and I'm going to show you how to keep packaging them up until you finally get to that mythical unicorn, which is a financial benefit. But first up, we have what's called observable. Observable benefits are super simple. It's more of a gut feel. It's something that you've noticed within your organization. Maybe the people around you are happier, or it seems to be like we're able to get this stuff done a little bit faster. It's observable, but you're not proving it. You're not taking data and you're not using something to show that that is actually true. The next version up from the spider sense observable is measurable. All right, well, if we can actually prove that this is how long it takes, we can show you this is some kind of benefit as a point in time right now. This is what it looks like. Now, this still doesn't show a difference. And remember, a benefit needs some kind of change. So this may be a measurable point in time like Net Promoter Score or survey or something that just confirms your gut feel, but it doesn't actually show you, all right, well, what was the difference between then and now? How did things get better? So in order to do that, you need to go to the next step, which is quantifiable benefit. Quantifiable benefit means you took a before and after. Before the change occurred, you have your baseline. Here is what currently is happening. You put the new change in and you take another assessment, and then you have something to compare against. Between the before and after, you can show what is the difference? What is the delta? How much did we make? What is the time that we're going to save? When you have that change, that quantifiable distance between at least 2 data points, preferably more, then suddenly you can prove that your change is having this increase over time. That's where magic happens and we can start getting to the final step. So the final step is financial. This one is more, all right, if I could take the quantifiable amount and I can prove that it has a dollar attached to it in a way that management cares about, now we're cooking with fire. We finally can get something that is for our case study. So in the 4 scenarios, man, people seem happier, observable. Okay, well, Net Promoter Score says, yeah, they're actually really happy. We scored a 70 out of 100, which is phenomenal for Net Promoter Score, measurable. And compared to last year, before we put all of these new initiatives in place for keeping people from churning, we were at like a 40. So we've had a 30-point bump on Net Promoter in the last year since we've implemented all these changes. That's all great. What's the financial benefit that came out of it? Well, we went and talked to HR, and guess what? We didn't churn nearly as many employees this year, and didn't have to go out and recruit. We didn't have to onboard and train. All of those extra costs are gone because we still have everybody working for us because they're so much happier. Well, that means we have 100 grand, for example, left in our budget because things are working so well. That's your financial benefit. That's the final key piece that you need to be able to take to management and say, look, HR, every year that we do this, this is the benefit that we're going to see as compared to spending all that money on churning employees and hoping they stay and training more people to come in. So by proving that value, this is where you get the best benefit and the proof for your case study. All right, so a couple of things that you can do really quickly to level up your benefits is make sure they're super specific. You don't want to have a huge, broad, meandering set of data that doesn't really answer a question. Make sure that you've defined it. This is what it is. This is what it is over time, and that all stakeholders can agree and understand what your data means. Second, if it's not measurable, then you can't use it to prove your benefit and your position. If you don't have any data, then you're just basically working from emotional impact and the things that you feel, your spider sense, not something that actually can reflect in data and nullify the opposite person saying, well, I feel the opposite. And 2 emotionals just basically cancel each other out. Finally, it needs to be achievable. So if you see that, hey, we have 100 minutes of delay whenever we do this process, if we introduce this new technology, is it really going to get rid of 100% of delays all the time? Probably not, but it might get really close. It might come to like 80 or 90%. So make sure that what you're saying is a benefit is achievable, that you actually will get there. And then you want to make sure that it's relevant. Most leadership is focused really, really tightly on something that's driving the business. Maybe it's legislation, maybe it's getting more customers, maybe it's trying to do sprints to get your technology or the thing that your business makes up to a better standard to compete with competitors. Whatever it is, that's where the focus is. That's where you need to also tie your benefit in. If you're swimming out, in the middle of a lake while everybody else is swimming together, you're probably not going to get much notice. But if you can hook onto the back of everybody swinging in the same direction, well, then you can just water ski your benefit right behind them and still get the same value. You're just going to get a lot more notice, and it's going to be a lot easier to get your idea across the table. And finally, it needs to be time bounded. When I say that, I mean you have to know at what point are we going to cut that this data that we're collecting is finished and ready. It might mean, hey, when 80% of the people are using the pilot that are supposed to be, we're going to take a measurement from that point. It's never going to be perfect, but you need to have some idea of when you're going to stop so that you can take your final adjustments and you can take that data that you've collected and bring it to management for your final ROI reports. So what are not benefits? I've seen a lot of these before. Things that are not benefits might surprise you. Like actually the annual staff satisfaction survey. People are leaving, so we take a survey. The survey itself is just a tool. The reason that people are leaving is a driver, but not having a financial amount tied to it, like what is the benefit we're going to see for financial money out of an HR account, it gets really hard to be able to show just how much importance Net Promoter Score or satisfaction surveys will have in your business. You have to be able to prove it in some other realm. Showing that it's increased in satisfaction over time. Like, great, it's quantifiable, but this is just the metric. It does still not prove people are happier and it has a financial amount tied to it. This is a good outcome, but without showing an increase in revenue or a decrease in costs, it's still kind of shy of where it needs to be. So finally, committing to making an improvement. Yes, we will buy that technology. That's the benefit. They point to the technology and like, look, it's here, it's working, people love it. Nah, that's change management. That's you put a change in, but we don't know if that new tool or new thing that you bought is actually going to have any kind of noticeable change to us or make things easier. When you can show before and after, yep, it actually did, and here's how we measured it, now you're going to be a lot closer to a benefit. And then finally, maybe you make an improvement, you buy a new piece of technology like a coffee machine. Great, it's you answering a staff satisfaction survey, but you don't have the exact benefits realized. It's just, yep, here's what we're putting in place. This is the thing, the outcome, the enabler of what we want to make people happier. But without proving it, it's going to be really hard to change this into something that we can use for an ROI and a business case later. And then this one's really hard. I've seen this happen a lot. Great. By putting this new technology in place, our staff are 10% more efficient. That's the benefit. It's actually not a benefit. If you think about it, if you did your job in half the time, you still get paid the same amount regardless. It just means that you have half of your day now available for something else. But management and the company still pay you. If you're a full-time employee, your wage didn't change just because you stopped working half the day. So what you need to think of instead is, all right, well, if I have half of my day available to me again, what would I do instead with it? Would I see more customers? Would I use that to decrease costs somewhere? What is it that extra block of time is going to translate into? Then you can use that as your benefit. Try not to use people are more efficient, because what that basically means is, yeah, great, you don't need 10% of the staff. The only way that I can see a benefit for that is to reduce costs. And by that, I mean reduce wages. So be careful when you say, we'll make people 10% more efficient. What are you going to do with the efficiency? All right, that 10% of extra time, we'll see X number of customers, or we'll be able to do this type of activity with the time that we get back. That's what you're going to hook into, not the staff being more efficient themselves. And then finally, when you're seeing a KPI or metric, or you have to measure something and tick the box and make it green, that's a KPI, an OKR. That in itself is not a benefit. It's a reflection that you're doing well, but the benefit isn't that you're compliant with legislation. It's that legislation was passed for a certain reason. Maybe you have to get something done in a certain time frame, or you can't go for tender or get more jobs, or there's going to be a negative impact. That is the root cause of why that legislation exists. The financial impact of doing that is going to be your benefit. So a couple of things that you can think of. What is a benefit? Well, this is a really good one. So we hired more staff, we had better retention, we avoided reductions in productivity, and then suddenly all of this extra money that we have, we're not spending on hiring and training, we're not going out and spending it on agency or part-time staff. All of those can be calculated as the dollar figure that comes out of the HR budget. That's compared to last year, this is what the benefit is. Next is satisfied employees reduce costs and litigation, maybe, because now we're not having to deal with complaints and lawsuits and legal matters. So we go look at the legal department's budget, and suddenly they have a lot more green at the end of the year as well. So by decreasing disgruntled employees and lawsuits and everything else, we're actually increasing how much money we're saving. That's a benefit. And then lastly, another one that you can think of is a difference between high paid, high quality, skilled workers, and interns that are there to offload some of the easy work. If your senior staff are really overloaded, but they keep lowering the ranks of what they're working on to help somebody that's a little less knowledgeable or training or doing something, this is where you get a huge gap of skill versus work output. If you can say, hey, we're going to offload this to a junior person or an intern, or some of these things doesn't have to be done by our most skilled staff members. It's why EAs exist for so many C-suite members, right? Why spend so much time on your email when anybody can do that? If you can double the number of customers that super skilled person sees, there's your benefit. Now they have at least this many hours back. If they can make that into a productive amount of time, then they can show that there's an increase in revenue from bringing in somebody or something to assist and eliminate some of the work off the plate. So every benefit basically comes from changes, but there are three types of changes as well. A change can be something like we're going to do something new, we're going to do something better, or it can even be we're going to stop doing this, like this delay, this inefficiency. It's just a whole bunch of workarounds. We're going to cut that out because we can make that a little bit more streamlined. It's usually going to come down to one of these three things. So if you take the four benefits that we've defined, financial, quantifiable, measurable, and observable, put it on the left-hand side of a grid, and you put the types of changes across the top, you can see where the CFO will care and where your peers are going to care. Anything above the line is going to be quantifiable, provable with data, have a financial benefit. Anything below the line is going to make you feel really good. It's going to be noticeable, but not really measurable. And it's going to be some of the more intangible stuff, some of the stuff that just gives your spidey sense the knowing that things are better without being able to prove it very easily. So the report template, this is some of the things that you're going to need to include step by step. So your executive summary is your why, and make this super short, 5 sentences at max. Why do we need to get in front of the CFO? If you give us just a few moments of your time, what is it we're going to do? We're going to fix this problem. It's going to have this financial benefit, and for every dollar you give me back, X amount. When you can put that into a very structured small statement at the top, I guarantee you people are going to want to read it more. Your business drivers. Not only do you need to know why you're doing it, but why is it going to succeed? There's something that's probably happening within your organization that is crying out for this, but you have to tie to it. So more legislation, a difference in the way that you're funded, the customer experience needs to change to get better reviews online. Whatever it is that you're trying to adjust from the C-suite level, then you can tie into that. These are the benefits that basically help you move in that direction. And finally, investments. Why is it that we need this money? Can we do it cheaper? Is it anything that is your main objective that you need to be able to clearly explain why you need the money? You also need to have your drivers. Like, if we don't do this, what's going to be the outcome? Use basically all of this stuff to kind of map out in your head what we call a Benefits Dependency Map. If you don't know what that is, look at our second workshop. We actually walk you through that. But it's from the technology that you use, the people in the middle, to the business drivers that are making you change. It maps everything together so that you can say, when we put this technology in, we're going to have to train people. They're going to have to get used to using the technology. We're going to have to adopt new policies and procedures to kind of make room for it. And all of that is so that we can hit this new driver, this new thing that's making us change so that we're successful with what's coming at us. The benefits table should look something like this. You should have something that's financial benefit. We're going to make this much extra dollars, or at least we're going to be able to do this amount more work, which will lead to more dollars. Being able to say we'll do new things or something better, or we're going to stop losing money. When you put this grid together, you'll see above this line, those are the ones you really want to capture and focus on for your report for the CFO. Also, you need to include in your calculations not just the benefits you'll see, but the things that are going to cost you money. So that might be new hardware, it might be consulting time, it might be new equipment, or um, bringing up assessments to your security team. Whatever it is that you need to kind of be able to get through, make sure that you've included the cost of that as well. And then finally, your number, your big like drum roll moment is going to be the financial benefit that you get, which is all of the stuff that you've shown increases revenue, decrease costs as a sum. And then you're going to take and subtract all your costs of all the things that it's going to take to get you there. And then you take that and that difference and you divide it by your costs. That will give you your ROI when you multiply it by 100%. Basically means for every 100% is a dollar that you're going to duplicate. So he gives you a dollar, 200% return, you give two back. 300% return, it's three back. So it gets really easy for you to say, for every dollar I give you X number back, just multiply that out. That is how many dollars in return. Finally, we'll go through an example here. So we've got a really good case study where we've done exactly what we're talking about, and we're going to walk you through exactly what happened. So for this one, we had a bunch of radiologists that were super interested in a new technology, something that was going to help them communicate faster with GPs, because right now, radiologists make about $320 an hour, huge amount of wage, only to be sitting waiting on the phone for hours out of the day for a GP to answer questions about the imaging that they're seeing. It could be an x-ray, it could be a question that they need about the medical history of the patient. Whatever it is, because they're sitting here and they're waiting for so long, it's costing a lot of money. So, secure communications so that everybody can just kind of post a question like on Slack or Teams and then get responded to as other people have the time would make this a lot better and more efficient so the radiologist can move on with their day and do other more important things. But what's the ROI of that and how do we prove it? So when we did this, we found that there was actually step by step within the process of getting an x-ray, a whole bunch of people that are involved in the process. First, our administrative staff. They're the people that do more of the low-level work of scheduling, administrating, emails, going back and forth, delivering the paperwork. The next level up is paid a little bit more because they're technologists. They take the actual x-ray, they do a little bit of the reports, they are a little bit more involved than just sending out the paperwork. They develop some of the paperwork and they make some of this stuff actually exist. And then the final one, and the most expensive one, is your radiologists. They're the ones that are strictly used as a blunt, like, force for one purpose to get as much revenue on that as possible because they're the only ones that can do that step. So when you look at it, it's something that's going to be mapped out in a value stream map. So what we do is we say, for every step, here's how long it takes, and here's the delays in between. So a value stream map is just going to show every part of the process, every task that has to be done and who's doing it. The non-value adding, or NVA, is going to be the delays, the time in between tasks getting done, sending something off and waiting forever for it to get back. Those are things that you have no control over, but they don't really bring value to the customer. It's just a lot of extra time for no reason. Value adding is something that is going to get that x-ray into that patient's hands as fast as possible. And it looks like basically like this. So on the far left, you have your radiology team. They're going to go and get a patient and they're going to say, all right, let's register in your system. Let's schedule you an appointment. Then they're going to wait for a little while for the appointment to come due, maybe in a week or two or a couple of days. And then they are going to go talk to the technologist. The technologist is the one that's going to actually take the x-ray, the chest, or whatever. And then once that's done, the film will finally be sent for a primary review to the radiologist. And here's where the radiologists make the most of their money. They need to be focused on what is wrong in this picture. And I need to go out to somebody else within my network and get their agreement 2 or 3 times that, yes, we also agree that is the correct diagnosis for this patient and what we're seeing in that image. When they're done, they pass it back to the technologist. Here's our basic summary, write it up, send it out. And they're the ones that have to spend the time writing up the report. they send it out to the admin gives it to the GP. Now, when we break this all apart, we can see that there's a certain amount of time for value add. There's not a whole lot that goes into doing the tests for the patient and doing some of the reviews. It can take minutes. It's actually the other side that's the problem. The delays in between steps, from the time that the patient made an appointment to the time they actually set their foot in the door, is a week. Maybe the time it takes for a radiologist to ring a GP, get a second consult, and get somebody on the phone to help them say, yep, I agree and concur, that's a couple of hours. When we start calculating the non-value add times, we can see there's some potential here. And this is kind of where we're going to focus all of our efforts. Radiologists make the most money out of this entire chain of people. How do we make their time more valuable? How we can get them more reports? How do we take things off their plate? That's what this communications platform is for. So we asked a group of radiologists, what are the 10 most wasteful things about your day? If you could give it to anybody, and you could, what would they be? The top things that they came back to us as, like, I need admin support, scheduling, I need to get a GP on the phone and sit there and wait for hours. We basically created an app so that as they did these steps throughout their business day, if they noticed that, hey, this is wasting my time, they can hit a timer and grab all of that information. And as we data source all of these delays and long time frames for really low value tasks from those radiologists, guess what? Now we can start seeing an average of just how bad these parts of their workflow are. When we start looking at that, we can say, all right, well, we've done it for 6 people. We know the organization is this big, so how much is it going to cost us to do it for everybody? So to do that, we basically just ask, how many times per week are you doing this type of work? And how many people are affected by that type of work? When we get the full number, it might just be a few minutes for one person, but multiply that out for a week, for a year, times 65 people, and guess what? That can be a huge number of what the potential revenue is going to be when you fix and eliminate some of this work. So what does that happen? What does that look like for us? Well, we basically took this into an Excel sheet. We calculated, here are the 10 types of workflows that are going to be the most problematic for radiologists. And after they sent us their information, we could see that there was going to be a huge, massive final calculation, a final tally. So we took the time savings of every workflow. We multiplied that by the number of times they do that type of work every single week. And finally, we multiplied by a full year of weeks and the number of people that it's going to impact. And that gave us our final potential ROI. What is this problem worth today? So when we basically put in a pilot, this is the final report and putting the pieces together. We put this FOXO solution in to show, all right, against our baseline, what was the before and what was the after. And what we found was pretty stunning. In the blue, you can see what they were doing before on those 8 key tasks that we talked about at $320 an hour. When FOXO came in, we could see all of that time was nearly eliminated, and they had so much extra time back that they were able to increase the additional weekly reports by almost 3,000 a week. So with 65 radiologists suddenly freed up to do 2 extra hours a week, now we're talking huge monumental amounts of revenue that could be generated once their solution rolls out to all areas of the business. If you'd like to see this more in depth, read it for yourself, definitely scan this. It'll take you to a website where you can download it for free so you can use it to build one of your own cases. Make sure that you've got these types of headers, that you've collected this type of information. And most often, you want to include your big headliner at the front. Why should I care? Make sure that's the biggest thing. We're going to give you so much time back that 83% of the admin time your radiologists have will be returned to you. Next, you want to say how you did it, why you did it, and what was the final outcome of everything else. If you have any questions, come talk to us. But you should now know, what are your benefits? What types of things do you need to look for? What makes a really good benefit? And how do you get it to a financial number? And then finally, how do you build your ROI report so that you can showcase just how much it's going to change your organization in the way that they need it to over time. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you if you've got one of these kind of studies or projects coming up. And we'll help you basically map everything together in our software and hand you all the data that you need to build that presentation and that report that's just going to knock your CFO's socks off. So take down our information, and if you need anything, please reach out to us. We would love to help. All right, talk to you soon.